Hello, everyone. We're your host, Beth Orr,
And Bridget Querns.
and welcome to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits, The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we're excited to talk to you today about a very special project that Bridget has been working on and a beautiful book, which I have to show the cover of this. So, we're going to talk today and start talking about warrior women turning life lessons into legacy. And Bridget has been a
Mm.
contributor in this project, and it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, if you get a chance to get this, I really highly recommend it. The well, we're going to get into all that. I'm just so excited to talk about this. And to start, um, I'd like to talk just a little bit, Bridget, about how you got involved in this project and how this came to you. I mean, this is a beautiful
Mm.
cover. I'm kind of wondering the extent that you got to work on this project with these amazing women.
Yeah, so this was something that I unknowingly started preparing for over a year ago. So I made a commitment as part of my spiritual journey, as part of my personal growth, to start writing 50 words a day. And
Mm,
the exercise was I am birthing the part of me that is an author. So I am an author. And just because I'm not published yet doesn't mean I can't claim that. So I claimed that. And part of that exercise was, what would an author do? What does an author do? And we know this as
mm,
part of our manifestation, or the exercises and rituals that we perform individually, that when you know that you are something, in order to fully embody that something, you start doing the practices that someone or something would do naturally. So, what does an author do? An author writes every day. So, what I started doing was writing 50 words a day, every day, on purpose. And some days it would be 50 words, and that was all I could possibly squeak out. And I just couldn't do anymore. And other days it would just flow and I would write and write. And it didn't
mm.
matter because it was just the practice of doing it. It wasn't, I'm writing this for this purpose. It was I'm an author, and an author writes. So then at the beginning of this year, my word for this year was abundance. And I had an idea of what I was calling in with that word, but at the same time, there was this open-handed, trusting receptivity that came with that, which was, I'm calling in abundance, and God, universe, whatever you want to use, whatever channel you want to use, however you want to show up in abundance for me, I'm opening myself to that. So I had
Mm.
a family friend, Desiree Cruz, approach me, and she said, I am starting this project, and part of her uh what she wanted to live into for 2023 was calling in women and creating an intentional community of women. And one of the ways in which she wanted to do that was to create a collaborative book in which women got to share their stories in order to leave a legacy for their
Mm.
future generations. And really, her intent behind that was, as women, we don't often get to tell our own story. And an asterisk on that is, we don't get to tell our own story in the way that we want it to be received. So
Mhm.
99% of the time, if not 100, we have some sort of traumatic event or really difficult past that we didn't necessarily get to write, but now we get to tell the story, and we get to frame it in the way that feels healthiest for us, and in a way that leaves a legacy and a gift instead of a mark or a scar. So the women in this book, the warrior women, are women who have been through something in their lives that was really difficult, really dark, really traumatic. And we write about those events and the ways in which they've transformed us, and the ways in which we are victorious, and we are reclaiming them, and we are becoming who we are because of them. So that was the project that she approached me with. And of course, it was like immediately a full body. I've been preparing for this. Of course, this is a yes. I'm all in
Mhm,
on this. And
mhm,
everything else that came from that was just a result of me immediately recognizing that my gut said yes.
mhm.
So it was unbelievable the way in which it unfolded, really. The Once we said yes, it moved so quickly. It was like, all right, your draft of your chapter is due in less than 30 days. And then we're gonna have the edits back to you. And then you have to get them back to us within 2 days. And then it's gonna be on the Jumbotron in New York City by what, June? And this was March. So we're like, how in the world, how is that even possible? I thought this took years to get, a book from conception to, like a physical product that we could have our hands on. Nope. So
Mhm.
it was a quick process, and it just all came together beautifully. And that's the story of how I got involved in it. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. I've got questions.
All right.
Questions and comments. Number one, I just love that you submitted, that you trusted, that you followed. This is part of that feral faith, right? Where you
Yeah.
just follow the universal preparation. You don't have any idea where it's taking you. You don't know if it's going to produce anything, what the outcome's going to be, but that you just trusted, that you were like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to do the practice.
Yeah.
And then through doing the practice, it's preparing me for something. So I think that's beautiful. The
Mhm.
second thing is I love Desiree's vision. And I noticed that you said that she approached you and she said, I am doing this.
Mhm.
And for the listeners, there is so much power in that statement of I am. And we talk about how anything that follows I am is like a slam dunk guarantee it's going to happen. You can get behind it if that person is
Yeah.
really committed to and believes that with 100%, passion. And it sounds like that's the vision that Desiree had, that she already had, like, was in this project, was going to have legs. It was already in the universe. And she was just bringing it about, which I think
Yep.
is a real testament to who she is, right,
Yeah.
and the power that she has. So you mentioned that she approached you and you had this opportunity to participate. Did you know immediately that you were going to be sharing this vulnerable story that you share in here, right? Because it sounded like, there was knowledge that it was going to be that was kind of what she was hoping for. It was just that things had happened to women and that they were going to be willing to be vulnerable and share a certain story. But I would imagine that you have multiple stories that you could have chosen to
Mhm.
share. So how did you land on this is the story I want to share and why that particular story?
Great question. I love that. Yeah, I have multiple stories, and I'm sure all of the women have multiple stories. And honestly, when I said yes, I had zero clue as to what I was going to share. I did not have a story that I was going to share. I said yes without even thinking about that.
Mhm.
And then once I said yes, I was like, "Oh, I have to write my chapter. What am I going what am I going to write?" So I actually started at the end. I started by thinking about where am I and who am I now, and what power does that have? What sort of transformative power did I go through in my life to get me there? And then really reflecting on, okay, what was that pivotal event that set me in motion into this specific place where I am right now? So I worked backwards. I started with the message. I actually wrote the end of my chapter first, which was sort of this image that God gave me of this mirror. And I wrote that first. And then I backed up and I said, okay, through this image that I just really sort of channeled through myself, what story in my life created my ability to see that, to manifest that, to be that person? And then it just naturally flowed. I mean, if it was so effortless, I honestly don't even remember writing the chapter because it came out so quickly and so effortlessly. It was like, really honestly, maybe 2 hours from start to finish. It was so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Just once I surrendered to, okay, I'm doing this and I don't know what story I'm bringing forward, but if this is already done, then all I have to do is jump ahead and ask, what did I share?
Mm-hmm. I love
And
that.
that's really what it was. Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, but I want to make sure that we track for everybody what you're saying
Yeah.
when you say
Yeah.
that. So this is already done.
Yep.
What do you mean when you say this is already done? And so I'm just bringing it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this gets into like quantum physics, but time is just an illusion. In order for us to exist in the form that we exist right now, time is an element of this existence. However, in the grand scheme, time is not. We're infinite, which means that can't be quantified. Infinity cannot be quantified, and time is a quantity. So it doesn't exist. So if we go from that premise, then what we can really draw out of that is the fact that if I'm considering doing this thing, then in my future, it's already done. And if my future isn't really my future, if it's all just an infinite now, then I can jump into that state of being and examine what that consists of. What is done? What does done look like? What does done feel like? And what message did I bring across? And
Mm-hmm.
if I really get
Mm-hmm.
into that still space of asking, I already know. It's like communing with my future self, although my future self is me right now.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So there was
Yeah.
this, what I hear you saying is your emphatic yes was an emphatic yes because it already existed. This
Yeah.
project already existed. You recognized it as something that was yours to pick up
Yeah.
because it resonated with you,
Yeah.
because it's already a part of you. So your future self is already your present self,
Right.
but you're just tapping into that part of you that's already done this project, and you're getting still and you're saying, so what am I writing about?
Yep.
Right? You're almost like asking the version of you that's already written it. So what are we doing? What am I writing about? And then you're just transcribing.
Yeah.
You're channeling
Exactly.
it. You're transcribing it and you're saying, "Oh, yeah, okay." And that's why it was easy. What you're describing is flow. That
Yeah.
when something is ours and it's something that we've already done, there is a quality about it that it feels effortless. It
Alrighty.
feels like, yeah,
I drew a diagram. So
okay.
this dot here, this black dot, this is our infinite now. This is our current self, our past selves, and all our future selves. It's I am. All of these arrows represent the infinite possibilities, because everything that we contain in this infinite now is infinite potential. So every possible potential step that we could take is already taken. It already exists. So all we have to do is identify the trajectory of the direction that we are going, and then say that's the one that I'm taking. It's my certain path. And that's that X right there. So by me asking, all right, I'm taking this path, I already know it. I've committed. I'm 100% in. This is my future self right now. Then I just tune into that and draw in what that looks like and what that is and embody that. And then it creates this. So the next step is it creates this loop between my current infinite self now and that path that I've chosen, so that we can commune back and forth and back and forth. It's this, what is it called? Self-creating. I forget the word for it, but where you close that loop and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and so just like in that diagram, you could have taken any one of those other arrows by
exactly.
saying no, or you ask what story and you decide to do, your mind says, "Let me do a different story."
Yep.
But the easiest path and the path to the X is the one that flows through you that says, "Yes, this is my emphatic yes, this is the story I'm supposed to tell. This is on this thread," right?
Yep. Yeah.
without regard to what oftentimes I think stops us, and I know this from personal experience, and I'm sure you do with other projects, is our mind and our rational mind,
Mm,
and what we think we should do starts to get in the way.
yep.
And what I love about your story is that it's truly an example of how it doesn't have to be difficult. It literally, you can pick up something and it feels light and it feels right because you're tuning in, you're taking the time to tune into your path, right?
Yeah.
That's already forged, that you already know, like it feels right, that you can take, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes it's counterintuitive to take the time to tune in because it's taking time, but it's actually the most efficient path that you could possibly take.
And I also want to add this because I'm remembering I'm having this somatic feeling of remembering what it felt like in my body. And
Mm,
two things happened. The first was the emphatic yes. That was the gut level. And I know because of my human design where to tune in. Everyone's yes is going to look and feel differently. Mine is immediate, it's responsive, and it's a gut level response. So if my gut says yes, that's my yes. And that is a very expansive yes. That feels
mm,
like this
mhm.
heart opening, welcoming in, just it's expansive. It feels open and free, and like I could take a deep breath into it. And then the second thing that happened somatically was this contracting, this quick, like fight or flight sort of breath, this what is that? The sympathetic nervous system response that was this rational mind. The rational mind kicked in and it goes, oh no, oh gosh, how do I don't have the money for that. I couldn't, how am I going to do that? That doesn't sound like that could actually happen. And all these questions start popping up in the mind, in the head. So I know it's not here, it's not this gut level, it's this. And when that pops up, then I meet that and I go, okay, how does this feel in my body? It feels limiting. It feels contracting. It feels like an obstacle. But if I look at that obstacle, is it true?
Mhm,
I don't have the money to do this. Is it true? And like
mhm.
really get honest with myself. No, it's not true. No, because my future self, the self that I'm calling in, the self that I am, is expansive and abundant and has no limitations.
Mhm,
So it's not true.
mhm.
And then I just questioned each of those things that popped up because I already knew what my gut level first response was, and I can trust that 100%. So anything
Right.
else that comes up, I challenge. And then by challenging that, that allowed me to feel even more fully into this higher future self that I was calling in. So don't ignore the challenges, don't ignore the obstacles, don't ignore the resistance. Use it. It's a tool, it feeds you. And those tools that I just gave are great ways that you can use that to feed the vision that you're trying to create and color and expand into.
Yeah, I love that. I think people will really appreciate that it's not that the denial or the suppression, rather, of what it is that's coming up. The thing that's coming up is actually a tool and it's information to listen to, but it doesn't mean that it's a no. What it actually means is it's not a no, it's something that's information because you already have your emphatic yes. And all it is information that actually leads you to, oh, yes, this is my emphatic yes. So I have to go through these checklists and I have to say, okay, well, this is why that it isn't true. And then once you go through that line of questioning, what it actually does is it makes you feel assured about moving towards your emphatic yes. It clears the path to where there's truly no resistance, because when you tamp something down, there's still a little obstacle in the way that you're not certain about because you haven't taken the time to run through the different threads, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Do yourself a favor and listen to those, but don't play into them. Don't feed them. Use them
Hmm.
wisely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and especially once you figure it out, let it go. Once you figure it out, you got to let that thing go. So, something that I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, without going into your entire story, so that readers can get the experience of going through that themselves. But I think something that would be really helpful for people is to go through some questions that you pose. So you had this incident that happened. You chose a particular story that you were like, okay, my future self definitively said, yes, this is what I this is what I want to share, and this is what I've already shared. But this experience ends up giving you some important soul questions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That were important for you to consider, and you actually shared them in here. So on page 38, you talk about that you had um, the hibernation period of the pandemic urged me into reflective solitude. The isolation felt divinely timed, delivered at just the moment when I undertook my soul's deepest work. I asked myself who I came here to be. What unique strengths did I possess in order to fulfill that calling? How could I restructure my life in honor of the gift of clarity I'd received? I think those questions are really powerful, and I wonder if you'd be willing to reflect on what that process was like for you as you were
Mm,
considering that, because you mentioned that it's an ongoing process.
yep.
But
Every day.
how do these questions come to you? What kinds of answers did you come up with, and how has that informed you as you're moving forward?
Yeah. So from the moment of that great like shaking event that I went through all the way through until now, there's so much that has emerged and so many iterations of answers to those questions, right? Like who I came here to be was a very specific answer, but it's almost as if I'm holding a lantern that was dimly lit. So when I first asked that question, I have this lantern in front of me, and that lantern is illuminating a very small part of my path and just a little bit of my face. And as
Mm,
I feed the question with more introspection, with more journaling, with more work, the light grows brighter and brighter and brighter. It
mm,
illuminates more of the path and it illuminates more of me.
mhm,
So in order to see more of the path, I have to see more of myself and vice versa. So who I came here to be evolves every single day. I get more of the picture. I grow more into the energy of who that is. So really, like the answer to that is it's almost constantly evolving, which I think is beautiful. And I think that's the purpose of life is that it's a constant evolution. It's a growth process. It's a school for our soul. So I guess the initial answer to that was just really the initial answer to that was a general, I am a soul on a mission to grow. And I am open to all of the implications that that has. If an implication of that is that the faith that I've grown up with expands and dissolves and becomes something new, then I'm open to that. If the implication of that is that my full-time job that is sustaining me, that is paying for my health care, and that is providing for half of our household's bills is something that I can no longer be, something that I can no longer show up in as this new whole self, then I'm willing to let that go. And those are a couple things that happened as a result. So those are actually true implications that happened for me. But again, the evolution was expansive. It felt welcoming. It felt like a deeper breath. It felt like breathing into more of this body, of becoming more of my whole self. So I knew they were
mhm,
yeses. So,
mhm,
so I guess it's not a really specific answer, but I think we have to come to our own recognition of who I came here to be as an idea before we come to a recognition of, well, what is my career path supposed to be? And even before that, it's like, okay, well, I came here to learn and to grow. And in learning and growing, I can serve others. So I'm either here to serve myself or I'm here to serve others. There's only two possible directions that I can go. And if I acknowledge that I'm uniquely here to serve others, then the way in which I am growing and the things that I'm learning and the way that I'm developing is going to feed into the way in which I can fully serve others.
Mm-hmm.
So man, that who I came here to be is a real conglomeration. It's not just a real simple, I came here to be a teacher or a mother of these 4 beautiful children who are currently screaming in the background, even though I've told them to be quiet. Those are parts of this whole self, but they're not the whole story.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you're saying because I do think, I could have asked you that question. And even if you had had one specific answer and you had said, this is who I'm here to be, I think it would have been accurate as a glimpse for that moment in time. And there would have been value to that. There would have been value to understanding that right now, Bridget is a person who is meant to be this person. There would have been value in understanding that glimpse of who you were here to be. However, I appreciate your answer because what it does is it opens it up and it talks about this ongoing process. And you even say in here, after this is an ongoing process, you say, I am emerging more every day, healing decades of fear, pain, and confusion so I can fully activate my soul's potential. And you mentioned that also in your answer, in your response. You said that what you were doing along the way in the process is you were feeding the question. And how you were feeding that question was through journaling and taking in information and processing it and learning. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that there's action that's involved in this for us to grow and to get past this fear and pain and confusion to activate the soul's potential. It takes effort. Sometimes we are in our society, it's a very passive, it's perceived as a passive experience when really it's not a passive experience. It is a fully engaged experience as we're evolving, right? So I
Yeah.
appreciate
Mhm.
that response that you had because it does show that, yes, of course, there's snapshots in time, but there's also this ongoing larger context of the evolution that takes active participation in order to. It's like it's just part of the journey. It's not a destination, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if we look at that second question, it's so funny because when you said, can we talk about the questions that you wrote? And I was like, I wrote questions? What questions did I've read, I can't even tell you how many times I've read this. And it's so funny because the questions are so much a part of who I am and my journey that I didn't even recognize them as questions. Like they're so rhetorical. It was
Hmm.
almost like a statement of who I am.
Hmm.
If you look at my Instagram bio, I ask really great questions. Like part of my life path is not knowing the answers, is not having the answers, but is knowing the questions to ask, when to ask them, who to ask them to, because we are not going to have the answers. Our power does not lie in having the knowledge or the wisdom or the answers. Our power lies in getting vulnerable and asking questions. Because in the question, we say, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I'm willing to sit and listen and learn. And
Hmm.
that's where the power is, really. That's where the
Hmm.
power is. So
Hmm.
funny that that second question was, what unique strengths did I possess in order to fulfill that calling? So the calling was my higher self, my soul, my guide saying, you are here for a purpose. Figure it out. This is your shaking. Like we're shaking you wide awake, whether you're ready or not. And this is your shaking, and your shaking is asking you to pay attention to the reason that you are here. You came here, like your soul designed this experience to learn something, and you're here for a reason. So, what is it? And of course, my response to that was, okay, well, if I'm here for a purpose, then I would have given myself this unique toolbox of strengths to fulfill that purpose, right? Like God would have collaborated. We would have sat down and said, okay, if you're here to become an auto mechanic, then you're going to naturally sync up to all of the methods that that person would use, the engineering, the understanding of the mechanics of a vehicle. So if I came here with a purpose, then I can use my strengths that have just come naturally to me as giant signposts leading me towards that purpose. Oh my gosh, I don't need the answer. I just have the right question. And the question is, what are my strengths?
Mhm.
So I just started evaluating, and when I tell you I spent over a year and I'm still in it, asking myself, what are my strengths? What do I naturally do? And still discovering the ways in which I can ask that question through my one-on-one coaching sessions with my clients. What are all the ways that I can ask them that question? How are the ways that they're discovering the answer? And then
Yes.
how can I use that and let that inform my own journey?
Yeah. Yeah. I think something that you said is really important. When you said, you're here for a specific purpose, we have been given rhetoric that sometimes can stop us from looking at that purpose because it can feel like we're being singled out, like
Mhm.
there's this like humility and humbleness and all these things that we're supposed to be, and it can feel to people like it's grandiose to
Mm,
feel like that we have a purpose. And I think it's really important that we have to get past this. We weren't all created the same. We don't all look the same. We don't all act the same. We don't all speak the same. We are in different cultures. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not all one and that we're not all interconnected in some way.
mhm.
But our differences are actually just meant to, like you said, be tools and supply and clues to our particular mission
Yep.
and our particular purpose. And so there's a value in discovering, like self discovering what that purpose is, getting beyond the human belief that somehow being singled out, there's something wrong with it. We don't have to be a narcissist in order to decide and focus on what our purpose is. It's actually a very integral social responsibility to
Mm,
ask ourselves, what is my purpose? Because it's to give to the collective, not for our own selfish gain. It's actually to give to the collective. And you get to be the center with somewhere, and that's within yourself. Like you get to be the center of like what you're here to do. But then it's like that single point that you have on that drawing and that diagram, right? Then it goes out from you to other
mhm.
people and branches out, and it supplies and nourishes and gives to other people, right?
Yeah. 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 Part of that purpose that I discovered was that there is no possible way that I can show up fully in my purpose, if you want to call it dharma, if you'd like to use another word for it, because some people really don't like that word purpose, my life path. There's no way that I can fully show up in my wholeness and not serve from that place. I am built and created to serve others, and I don't feel fulfilled unless I'm doing that. So
Mhm.
the natural progression of this evolution of this question was, all right, who am I here to be? What are my unique strengths? And how can I serve others from those strengths? And then the other question that I wrote was, how could I restructure my life in honor of the gift of clarity I'd received? So the gift of clarity was this moment where I said, honestly, I did die. I died so that I can fully be with you and be present and be who I am right now. It was an ego death. It was a death of the shoulds. It was a death of what I thought I was supposed to be, or the images of myself that were projected on me from others, it was a death of all those things. I died. I died
Mm,
to them because the recognition was, in this moment, I'm being told that I'm dying, and I'm not accepting that as my reality. And because I'm not accepting that, that means that my responsibility now is to show up fully alive. So if I move forward, it was another one of those point moments. Okay, I could allow myself to die right now, and I know that that would be fine. I feel peace about it. But because I'm not accepting that as my reality and I'm choosing to live, now my responsibility is to fully show up authentically, transparently, in the wholeness of who I am, and every day to take steps that honor that gift of clarity and that gift of life.
mm,
So, no more am I going to listen to the voice that says, well, if you really fully show up as who you are, people are going to think you're weird. Yep. Great. Let them. If you fully show up as yourself and you start preaching and saying all these new things that you believe and that you've come to know as your truth, people are going to you're going to get excommunicated. Like, I grew up Catholic, right? Like, they're going to kick you out. You're not going to be accepted in these circles anymore. Great. Let them. Because the more I show up as the wholeness of me and I challenge those sleepy views or those people who maybe aren't quite ready to be fully awake, the more I can shift and shake others. I'm just passing on the gift of clarity that I received to others. It
mhm.
doesn't matter whether it's their time to receive it or not. It's just that this is the role that I'm called to play, and I'm going to fully stand in that role and embody it.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got 3 things to say on that.
Yeah.
Um, first of all, I always think it's important just to acknowledge that, I had this moment, I don't know, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago where I was like, I had this recognition that, is it more important for me to do what I'm here to do, or to have other people feel comfortable that I'm not weird or
Mm,
different? And there's something about, like, once you start to realize that there's always somebody who doesn't understand or appreciate what you're doing. And if we were to always try to just, make sure everybody else was okay, then we're saying that somehow that's more important than what we're here to do. When really the only thing that we can control is what we're here to do and not other people. And it's even kind
mhm.
of a form of manipulation to try to make other people feel comfortable.
Ooh, I
Like,
love that. Yes. It's a
you know,
form of manipulation to try to make other people feel more comfortable. Yes, because we're manipulating them to believe that we are who they think we are, and we're not.
yeah, yeah.
Truth bomb. I love it.
If I even knew what it meant to tweet, I would do it.
I don't have Twitter either. Someone who wants
Oh,
to be
it's
our
just
social
Twitter.
media
Okay.
manager. We're calling in a social
Tweet it.
media manager. We have a great position for you. We'll pay you in love and coaching
Appreciation.
and
Yeah.
appreciation.
Acknowledgement. Number 2, um, you mentioned that sometimes people have an aversion for the word purpose or
Mhm.
utilizing purpose, right? And for me, when I think of purpose, and I'm not trying to convince somebody who doesn't like that term, but yet I am going to have a comment about that.
Mhm.
Um, what if your purpose is just to be you?
Yep.
And whatever that means. So if you think that your purpose is to just relax and take things as they are and to just go with the flow, what if that's your purpose? And that's
Yep.
what you do, is to relax and take things as they are and you go with the flow. And then you teach the rest of us that there's a time and a place for it. Now, it doesn't mean that it's our whole life and that's all we do. But if it's your whole life and it's what you feel like you're here to do, then maybe that's your purpose.
Spot
And is
on.
that okay? We all don't have to just go with the flow and do it all the time, but can we see the value because you do it so well that we're like, I'd like a taste of that,
Mhm.
right? And it contributes to my life in a way that is significant, but I couldn't have tasted it if you hadn't had it as your purpose and you weren't fully being you,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
And then the last comment is around kind of a segue into, part of our topic, as part of our title is the unfolding, and we tend to find these ways that we have these um, ways that our lives have overlapped, right? And we have these ways that we've had very similar experiences. And of course, almost anybody who's listening right now probably has a tragic story or something that's happened to them that they could have written a chapter in a book about something that's happened to them. So we many of us could identify with tragedy, but not necessarily the details like
Mm,
what you described. What I think is really interesting, I'd like to discuss is a mirror seems to have been really important in your story.
mm,
A mirror was really important in my story too, like really important. It's been instrumental and something that I've spent quite a bit of time in my coaching working with as a technique that came to me as I was dealing with something that had happened to me.
mm.
So I kind of like to talk about that overlap a little bit because I think not everybody listening is going to have a mirror come up in their story. In fact, most of the coaching clients that I have, that is not something that is a regular exercise for them.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit more about the mirror and it
Yeah.
coming to you as something as a spiritual experience?
Yeah, so like I said, that's where I started my story, was with this concept of a mirror. And this is the way in which the universe, my guides, God, speaks to me on a daily basis. The way that I think and receive information is through symbology. So everything in my life for me, when I look at this plant in front of me, when I think of my coffee, when I read this book, everything is symbolic of a greater, deeper truth. Everything is symbolic because everything is an aspect of the creator. Everything. So the way that I receive messages from my creator is through the symbols in my life. And the symbol that God showed me at the beginning of this process was a mirror. And I saw in my mind actually a mirror that hangs in my bedroom right now. When we moved into our first house, there were these two mirrors. There was one on the landing of the stairs on the way up to our second floor, and there was another, I believe, at the top, the very top of the stairs. And they were, I mean, the frames were ornate, like they had like gold leaf on them. They were really intricately carved. The edges were beveled, and they stood out to me because the first job I ever had, this isn't even in the book, you're getting a bonus. The first job I ever had was at a glass and mirror company. Okay. Oh my gosh,
You
this is
can't
coming to
make
me
this stuff
right
up.
now.
This is
This is
crazy.
literally coming to me right now. I'm remembering this. The first job I ever had was at a glass and mirror company, and I was so young. And yet I walk into that company and they had me doing their payroll. Like, this is my first job. Okay, holy cow, what responsibility. But I got to learn a lot about glass and mirrors. I got to learn about the reason why glass becomes a mirror and how it does, and all of the different finishings and what a beveled edge can do, and all of these interesting things that I mean, I didn't think I'd have interest in them, but they're fascinating. So the picture of this mirror comes to me when I'm asking for, what am I supposed to write? What is my story to tell? And I got this image of this priceless ornamental mirror. It's got, like I said, beautiful finishings on it. It's got beveled edges. It's just gorgeous. But this neat thing happens when you look into this mirror, is that it doesn't just reflect you back to you. It reflects like the deepest, most intimate parts of yourself, your highest self. When you look at who you are in this mirror, you see the wholeness of who you are. Like, you are captivated. And not only that, but you see yourself the way that God sees you, which is this perfect, beautiful, created being. Perfect, exactly as you are. And like, you can't look away from that when you see that reflected back to you, you're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it's like this mirror is seeing me as the me who I always dreamed I could be. Like, this is incredible. So I had this image of this mirror that does this. It complements the space that it's in. It just captivates people who gaze into it. But then over time, you start to forget about the power of this mirror. And sometimes when you have something that's really, really priceless and you actually think about the value of that object, you start to think, oh, I can't have that out. I can't be using that. I have to like put that away and protect it. And so the person in this story puts the mirror away and protects it and wraps it up and it's like, where am I going to store this? I'm going to store it in my basement. It's dry, it's dark, it's cool, great place for it. And then something happens. This tragedy happens. And the mirror gets seemingly ruined. It gets water damage. It's got mud on it. There's a flood, and it just gets ruined. And the person is thinking, "Oh my gosh, but I thought that was where I had to put it to protect it." And what comes from this story of the devastation and the guilt and the feeling is this is exactly what we do to that image of ourselves. We hide it away. We put it somewhere where it's going to be safe, right? It's safe if no one sees it because then no one can criticize it. We put it we wrap it up. We think that we're taking better care of it. And the truth is that the best way that we can take care of this whole beautiful, perfect soul being, created being, divine spark that we are, is by fully embodying it, is by putting it
Mhm.
out for everyone to see, is by reflecting the glory and the beauty of exactly who we were created and made to be.
Mhm.
It's that we are that mirror. We are that priceless treasure. We are the full, whole, perfect image of ourselves, every single one of us. And the more that you take on this remembering that every single person who you encounter is not just another self, is not just a spark of the divine, but as their full, embodied higher self, is lacking nothing. It changes our entire perspective of life, our entire perspective of what we thought was separation. It just changes everything. And so that image of the mirror and that story that I end my chapter with is a reminder of everything that you are and permission to fully embody that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That is an extra. That's a bonus. I love how what you're describing is this that in the mirror you get the grace of being able just to
Yeah.
see you for who you are now. But yet once you see you and you understand the infinite nature of you and that you understand who you truly are, then there's this interesting paradox. Like, not only do you see you and you have grace in being you, but it also stretches you.
Mm,
Like it makes when I see me, I don't want to strive to be the best version of me because I'm lacking something or that there's something wrong. But I realize the power that I have, the infinite power that I have to be like it's like a permission, like
mm,
Liz Gilbert talks about the permission slip that you get, right? It's like
mm.
permission that I have to be this me because I see that this is who I was created to be.
Yeah.
It's like I see myself. And so for me, the mirror is also important. I almost was like ditto, but we need a little bit more. But I was like, yes, I had this experience happen without getting into the whole story, but I had this experience happen where I needed to see the outside world less
Mm,
and see the infinite inside world more. Because then what it did was is it reminded me what I'm really a part of, right?
mm.
What I'm really at my essence a part of. And it's like once you see that part of you, and what came to me was really looking at myself deeply. And what came to me was in part that I have infinite resources. Like I have the fullest capacity to, when I center in and I look for my emphatic yes, and I try to figure out what my next right step is, and I'm on this path, that I have access to be this version of me that can get really still and centered and has all of this capability. But it's also guided by this understanding that I'm listening for what's beyond that is informing me inside. But then I have the strength by looking at myself to know I'm in there,
Hmm.
and I see the true nature of who I am. And again, it gets back to that I am,
Yep.
right? I see the true nature of who I am. And then I just get really curious about, like, instead of doing and regurgitating what everybody else is doing in the world, I want to know what I'm uniquely here to do, and I want to bring that out. I'm like, oh, I am here to co-create something, not just to keep doing what has already been done. I'm here to do this unique thing.
Yep.
And I believe that we all have that unique spark and that nature inside of us, like something that if we contribute and we provide and do, that it has a full total impact to the collective.
Hmm.
Like it could be this one small little thing that seems little, but it's not.
Yeah.
Because there's not one person in the world that's doing anything, even when they have a big, even Oprah, as big as what she's doing, still only has a piece. She's not doing it all, right? But everybody has a responsibility to do something on some sort of a spectrum, and it all matters to the collective.
Yeah. All of
It
it.
all matters.
Mm.
So that just gets me really excited because we can literally discover what that thing is and know that we all have permission to just ride around in it,
Yeah.
to go where it leads, to be excited about sharing that. And it doesn't matter what it is, if you're talking about something that you're really enthusiastic and excited about, people lean in and they're interested because they it's almost like they can feel the divinity in it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And when you are fully leaning into it, when you're fully embodying it, that means that you have concentrated your energy back into yourself. So instead of pulling everyone else's energy or projecting your energy onto other people, you are really focused and your energy is pulled in because you are using all of your resources to create this wholeness, to embody this person. And when you pull your energy in, you act as a magnet. All of a sudden, people are drawn they're like, what is going on? I don't understand. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's magnetic.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So the other, as kind of wrapping up this, parallel that we had in this particular, like with the mirror
Mm,
example, I also kind of want to point out something came to me as I was thinking about this just now. I couldn't even tell you what the name of this was, but in 2012, I participated in a book where it was 365 days of gratitude, and
mm,
they were stories. And I think it wasn't 365 stories; it was weekly. So there was one a week that somebody could go through and kind of ponder and think about. And so I was in this collective in this book, but it was a gratitude book. And what my story was about, now mind you, some people's was around gardening and cooking,
mhm.
and all of it had value, but for mine was actually about something bad that had happened to me that had been transmuted. So I had a broken neck at 16, and it was about how that broken neck changed the trajectory of my life and really had me get centered. In fact, my story coach Kristen Haney talks about how our pain wakes us up,
Mm,
and that's what this story kind of reminds me of. Is like I chose a story that I didn't even know to be woken up until something had happened to me, and suddenly that was like one of the first times that I was like, "Oh, I've got to shift my path." Like this reminded me of, like, I'm alive. What am I supposed to do? But it was in the pain that got that woke me up, that got transmuted, that shifted the trajectory of my life. And then it just keeps shifting and shifting and shifting each time I experience something that wakes me up. It gets me really centered. And now I just try to live my life in a way that I try to stay centered more than I'm not centered. And it's
Mhm.
almost like meditation. I kind of keep trying to come back and let go of the thoughts that don't have any purpose and are just busy, right? And I just keep
Yeah.
trying to come back without a sentinel event, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I've been experiencing kind of living in that meditative state for a few weeks now. It's been really interesting. It's so much easier right now to just drop in and tune out and get really centered and get really present than it has ever been in my life. And if I'm reading this properly, that's because we are coming up upon another transformative event, but this time it's really positive. It's really big. And we're going to need all of our resources focused in order to know exactly how to utilize what's coming. I think
Hmm.
that's what I see out of this. Um,
Hmm.
you got me thinking about, I don't remember what specifically you said, but I wrote down over here again, the unfolding is an invitation. The unfolding is an invitation because we felt like we were handed this beautiful, incredible invitation to be part of something so much bigger than us. And it was like, you can't not say yes to this. I don't
Hmm.
know what it involves, but oh my gosh, yes, please sign me up, whatever it is. But it's not just that. I think that this invitation extends further. I think that this invitation is an invitation to everyone who hears and sees us to respond to. Like you are now part of the invitation of the unfolding. It's
Hmm.
extended to you, and you know exactly how you can say yes to this. You already know. If you're hearing this and you're seeing this, then it's an invitation to you to say yes to your unfolding. And I'd love to end, if we could, with the story about why we say let's. You had me at let's.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Would you want to start us on it?
Well, yeah, I can. I think my memory is not as good as yours, but I think we were talking about the movie that really bothers me, where was it?
It was Jerry
She's a
Maguire.
Jerry
We were on a
Maguire.
hike.
Okay, yes,
Yeah, we were on a hike. Okay, you want me to start it? Okay, now
go for
you've
it.
jarred my memory enough.
Great.
So, we were on a hike, and while we were on that hike, we were talking about the movie Jerry Maguire and how, at one point at the end of the movie, he's rushing in the door, and there's a group of women, much look like this, a group of women, and they're in a circle, and they're wrapping around the woman that Jerry is interested in. I'm not into it enough to be able to tell you the people, but he has done her wrong. He has done her wrong, and they are wrapping around her, and he rushes in, and he's all tongue tied, and he doesn't know what to say, and he goes, "You complete me." And she gets all like, and everybody's like looking like, how is she going to respond to this? And then he starts going and rambling and all these kinds of things, and finally, after he spills all this stuff that is just rubbish and doesn't matter, she stops him, and she said, "You had me at hello." Now that was actually a powerful line. I remember this line
Yeah,
because I was
yeah,
like, "Huh, you had me at hello." And that speaks, what I loved about that was is it speaks to the scope of love, right? And that all this stuff, all these words don't matter, but the essence of like what somebody's trying to say trans, translates in that circumstance to what somebody's really trying to say. The words don't matter. It's you rushed in, and you have the potential to look like an idiot, but you didn't. You just went in anyway because you love this person, right? You're willing to do it. And so anyway, so we're on the cusp of this conversation, and you're starting to talk about some project that or something that you wanted to do, and you were like, "So, let's," and I go, You had me at let's. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, yes. Wait, you go let's, and I go yes.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And and you start laughing, and you're like, you didn't even listen to what it was, and I was like, it doesn't matter. You had me at yes. Let's.
Let's. Yeah.
And it's so true though when you're doing something, and I think back to the original trail is that I think something that you and I, even though we have no idea where this is going, as we're going along, like, of course, we're going to start to have a realization about what it could be, or even what it is now,
Mhm.
right? And I think what's beautiful is that so many times in our life we have invitations to accept an unknown path, but it requires us to have faith, uncertainty, fear, all of these things that go along with the unknown path. And I think what people have the opportunity to see in this is just that, yeah, of course, there's going to be all kinds of things that come along with it. But watch it how every single episode and every single thing that we talk about, it brings something. And at some point, when one of us isn't here in the world anymore, or the project ends, or whatever, then it will have created this whole thing, and all
Yeah.
of it matters.
Yeah.
But none of it happens unless you say yes. You say let's, and I'm like, yes. None of it happens unless you say yes, and then you act on it, right?
Mhm.
And so my hope is that people can see that on the other side of every invitation is your own unique unfolding
Mhm.
that you have an opportunity to say yes to. And if you don't do it, then none of this happens.
Yeah.
None of this happens. And that's okay. You get to keep saying yes to what you're doing right now. But then you are passing on an invitation. And to me, those invitations directly come from what we're uniquely asking for. Every invitation that I get, I believe, is cultivating or in response to something that I'm asking from into the universe. It's an
Mm.
appeal. So if I'm asking for more faith, if I'm asking for abundance, if I'm asking for enthusiasm and creative partnership, then whatever comes up is in response to what I'm asking for. So you want to know why things are coming up, or you have this invitation? What's inside you, spoken or unspoken?
Yeah.
But you
Mm.
have that invitation for the yes.
I love it. I love that so much. We're gonna print shirts, bumper stickers. You had me at let's.
Let's.
Oh,
So
I
thank
love
you
it.
for this conversation, my friend.
Mm. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah. And a
yeah.
special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can learn more about Melissa and her work at melissamossart.com. And thank you to Cloud Cult for our podcast music from their song, There's So Much Energy in Us. You can learn more about Cloud Cult at cloudcult.com. And thank you for listening. And until next time, friends, peace, love, and light.